can explore the universe. I can explore the universe. I can explore the universe.
I can explore the universe. I can explore the universe. I can explore the universe. Hype is one of the best things about the gaming industry and really any medium in general. Being swept up in gorgeous pre-release footage, an intriguing setting, as well as the reputation coming from a developer's previous titles, makes the anticipation of the moment you lay your hands on a game an event rather than a big moment. All you have to do is manage your expectations and understand what you're getting excited about, and hype can be a beautiful thing. And because people weren't paying attention, something like this happens. Hello Games, the developers of the hugely underrated Joe Danger series, decided to create a game that takes place in a procedurally generated universe that contains 80 quintillion planet-sized planets. Now who wouldn't want to be excited about that? Here we have No Man's Sky, a game that has built up a ridiculous amount of hype about such a compelling concept, but because gamers didn't decide to investigate what the game was about, they didn't understand why this game wasn't what they expected. If you guys have seen my video that I posted earlier this year, the 10 games of 2016 that might suck, then I'm here to tell you that in the end, I was right. No Man's Sky starts off with you waking up on a random planet, which makes the simple act of starting the game so exciting. You can literally start anywhere. You could be on the most unsafe, least pleasant planet with harsh conditions, or you could wake up on the most beautiful, lush place you've ever seen. Me, I woke up on a boring red planet that contains giant onions with tentacles sticking out of them. Your job is to gather up all the resources you need to get your ship up and running so you can freely fly in space and explore the giant universe. Well, there is the main objective to fly towards the center of the universe, as well as discovering this all-controlling entity called the Atlas. Once you're in space, you can literally go wherever you want. Now, I was surprised with the amount of lore that's hidden in the game explaining how the universe came to be, as well as the races of aliens you interact with, but this is a game that wants you to create your own stories. At certain moments, No Man's Sky's visuals are a broad, clean array of colors and sense of wonder. While it's not technically impressive, the game's art style is fantastic. Seemingly inspired by traditional 70s and 80s sci-fi movies and comics, No Man's Sky looks like the type of universe you would want to explore, with multicolored skies that maybe you want to call this planet Rainbow Road, to dense, lush environments with countless amount of trees and plant life moving with the wind. While only around 1 out of 5 planets are noteworthy in their beauty, the game's art style is consistently captivating. There are some problems though. The drop distance is low, which made it harder for me to look for creatures and specific elements. Some objects aren't colliding with their environment properly, and there are countless more visual inconsistencies. Regardless, No Man's Sky is still a pretty game. Near the end of my playtime, I felt as though my only encouragement to play the game any longer was so I could discover just a few more planets that are beautiful enough that I can roam around and pan the camera slowly for long periods of time. And unfortunately, that says a lot about the quality of the actual game, but we'll get to that in a bit. We can't be talking about No Man's Sky's presentation without bringing up the soundtrack composed by British post-rock band 65 Days of Static. Whether you're simply admiring the scenery, fighting against random space pirates, or seeing just how big the universe is through the menu, the game's music fits perfectly with whatever you're doing. It feels magical. Not only does the music alone make me want to explore the game's universe, but it also reinvigorates my creativity every time I listen to it. So, I bought it. It's awesome, and it's easily one of the most universally acclaimed parts of the game. So, let's talk about what there is to do in No Man's Sky. First and foremost, in order to get any upgrades for anything such as your suit, your ship, or your multi-tool, you'll need to wander around the planets you come across and mine all the materials you need. During the first hour of the game when you're trying to get your ship up and running, the game does an excellent job of letting you figure out what you need to collect. Almost like Dark Souls, you just have to figure it out all on your own, and it doesn't take long to understand how the system works. The problem is, half of what you do in No Man's Sky is walk around collecting the same types of materials over and over again, and that's literally it. You'll eventually give yourself upgrades so you can mine faster, but considering that this is the main thing you'll be doing throughout the game, it quickly and consistently becomes tedious and boring. What's worse is that although you'll be spending half of your playtime gathering these resources, you'll be spending half of that time popping up menu screens and messing around with your inventory. Navigating your inventory for both your ship and your suit feels similar to how it is in Destiny, but it doesn't seem like the best choice for a game such as this, and the amount of item slots you start off with is painfully low. And while you can upgrade your inventory slots later on, you'll almost always never have enough room to carry rare supplies you don't immediately need, such as gold. Now I know there are some gamers out there, maybe yourself included, that enjoy spending their time mining resources for hours upon hours as a fundamental gameplay mechanic. But for me, it feels like an unnecessary hassle. And while I don't usually mind scavenging resources in games, it becomes a game-breaking problem when the rest of No Man's Sky's mechanics are consistently mediocre. Flying your ship works well and also pushes that feeling of adventure, but the game is really picky as to where and how you fly when you're hovering over a planet, and when you get too close to the object in space, some weird physics kick in as you start to randomly bounce all over the place. However, that feeling you get when you first seamlessly fly from planet to space was a magical moment, and I was still impressed every time we would fly towards a planet with little to no technical issues. It's when you start traveling towards different star systems that problems start to arise. Many other gamers, as well as myself, would have their system crash multiple times when we go into warp drive. There are some combat segments both against pirates in space and some of the Atlas drones that patrol the planets if you piss them off for whatever reason. Not only are these combat segments separated between hours of tedious repetition, but they're not even good. Fighting in space always feels as if you're at a disadvantage no matter how much you upgraded your ship, as fighting against more than 2 ships means you're basically screwed. Enemy ships are much faster and can turn much more fluently than you can, which almost makes it impossible to hit them. And if you want to replenish your shields so you don't die, the only thing you could do is bring up the menu and manually use your resources, which means your ship stops moving and you remain vulnerable to the enemy attacks. And then there's fighting on land, which is just straight up boring. Just hold your trigger until the drone explodes. There's also an intergalactic trading system where you can buy and purchase materials and items, where you're able to come across other aliens and either trade with them or even purchase their ships. You can also interact with some aliens and be tasked with choosing the right thing to say to them, which isn't easy because they speak completely different languages. Throughout the game, you'll discover these runes that teach you specific words to certain languages. At first, it seemed like a rewarding and interesting game mechanic to learn other languages and piece together what these aliens are saying so you can interact with them more properly. But it didn't take long for me to understand how shallow the system is, as all you need to do is to read carefully as to what your character is narrating to understand what choice is the right choice. Even if the majority of the gameplay isn't polished, the actual act of exploring places literally no human, including the developers, have ever seen before is an astounding feeling that almost can't be replicated in any other game or even in locations in real life. While there are many planets that just feel like different versions of Mars, every time you land on something visually unique is a special moment. And to have the ability to name planets, creatures, and plant life you come across truly made me feel like I was an adventurer. Unfortunately, after around 10 hours, it starts to get old really fast, as you realize that the layouts of these planets are relatively the same. There will always be common elements of common supply. There will always be stations planted on big empty spots. There will always be quote-unquote rare elements and language statues to come across. And it also sucks that although you will come across many visually unique animals, not only do they all act the same, but besides some hostile animals, you can't even interact with them, especially the larger animals. Once all this starts to sink in, the realization that No Man's Sky is the same thing over and over again is heartbreaking. It was the last thing that happened to me before I came to a decision that my time with No Man's Sky was over. You could potentially sink your whole life into No Man's Sky and still be generations away from seeing everything. In fact, it is totally possible that not even 1% of the game's universe will be collectively explored by everyone who's played it. But once you realize that everything starts to be the same, the obligation to continue exploring quickly disappears, even before you make it to the center of the universe. No Man's Sky is not for everyone. Its unfathomably giant universe is the game's biggest selling point, and this universe is built upon a beautiful art style and incredible soundtrack. That feeling of discovering beautiful, unknown places through seamless load times alongside the game's presentation is a feeling that is rarely found in both video games and real life. But once you're a few hours in and realize how repetitive these worlds are, the joy of exploring disappears immediately. With uninspired gameplay mechanics, little variety, and an overall lack of polish, it's hard to feel obligated to continue your adventure. No Man's Sky is an indie game that's been marketed as a AAA full retail game. As an indie game, it's a great experiment that for a short while feels fresh and unique. But for a full-priced game, it's hard to justify the purchase. Regardless if this game was meant for you or not, Its quality is far beyond what the developers were reaching for. No Man's Sky receives a 6 out of 10. So that's what I think of No Man's Sky, but please, no matter what your opinion is, let me know what you think of the game in the comments below. And yes, Ashwin, I'm sorry I disappointed you. For more video game reviews and to be a part of a wonderful community that has finally reached 1,000 subscribers, then subscribe to Bathroom Gamers. Thank you for watching, and stay fresh.